the game can see the boxing voice.
Welcome back, gang, for the first time and hopefully many more to come. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and click on the notifications right here, this little bell, so you can get those emails every time we go live.
Bob, how are you?
Good.
So just first and foremost, obviously, I guess walk us through how you're feeling as a promoter emotionally all together with Terrence Crawford's performance over Jeff Horn and just the aftermath, the way the media is taking to him.
Well, you know, Bud is finally getting his due from the fans and the media. He's an outstanding young man, and he's a great fighter. You know, he's the best that I've seen in this class since the great Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, he is the whole package, as he showed on Saturday night.
Can you walk us through a couple of years ago when Cameron Duncan gave you that call and said, look, we got Terrence Crawford, he's willing to step in for British Prescott. How involved were you back then, or was that when you as well noticed what you had under your promotional belt?
Wait a second. You got it all wrong. When the fight fell out, and so Prescott was available in a co-feature on HBO, I had seen a Terrence fight on a lot of our cards, underneath. And I realized what a great talent he was. So when that spot became available, I said to my matchmakers, you got to go to this kid Crawford and put him in that spot, because that'll launch him by being on HBO. And Cameron Duncan said, absolutely not. He's not ready for anything like that. But I was so pissed off that I had Brad Goodman call Brian McIntyre, Bomac. And Bomac said, is Duncan crazy? Of course we'll take the fight. So that fight was taken over the protest of Cameron Duncan, who, if it was up to him, Crawford would have still been fighting on our undercard to this day.
So from that performance, is it when you decided to put all the chips behind Crawford, or you knew that he would be a star? When did you know that he would be what he is today?
Of course not. But I knew what a talent he was. And since that point, he has subsequently shown what a magnificent talent he was. Remember, he was just a lightweight then. And this was before he fought Ricky Burns, went over to Scotland to fight Burns and beat Burns and won the lightweight title, and then subsequently won the junior welterweight title. And Terrence at that point didn't have the experience, when he had his first fight, and wasn't able to polish his skills as he subsequently did to become the fighter he is today.
Now, Bob, obviously you've made a phrase pretty famous in the boxing world with the word marination. And I think we first heard it or used this most versus Juan Manuel Lopez and Gamboa. First and foremost, do you ever feel any regret that you didn't make that fight? Or do you think it was still the best move to keep them away from each other?
It was the best move because at that particular point, I wasn't certain that Juan Manuel Lopez would be competitive with Gamboa. And therefore, until I saw otherwise, I wasn't ready to make that match. Now, I use the term marinated and so forth because I wasn't going to admit at that point that Lopez wasn't ready for Gamboa. As it turned out, Lopez, as good a fighter as he was never ready for a Gamboa. Gamboa was the superior fighter.
Beautiful. I love your honesty. So now that we have that clear, the marination is a bit of deflection. Will we need marination in this Crawford-Earl Spence fight? It's all over ESPN. Obviously, that's credit to you and having your top-ranked deal now on ESPN. So they're covering Crawford. They're thinking of who he could match up best with, and everyone is pointing fingers at Earl Spence. It's the hottest topic since Jeff Horn and Terrence Crawford happened. Then you have Bomac, who you know has no hair on his tongue. He's already said, in his words, and I quote, "will fuck him up." Speaking of Earl Spence, where does Bob Arum lie with the Terrence Crawford-Earl Spence fight? How many months? How many fights each? How far are we from that?
Well, we have to determine, this is a business. We have to determine when the fight has reached the peak so that the fighters can be compensated the way they should be compensated. In other words, I think it's a great fight. It's a fight that's got to happen. Probably if it was done now, the fighters wouldn't be able to realize the money that they will get, say, a year from now. Because as more and more people talk about it, and it's one thing for the boxing public to talk about it. That's great. That helps. That's terrific. And boxing people are talking about it. I've got to get the general public, the sports fans, talking about it. I have a megaphone in ESPN. They'll be starting to talk about it. And when the fight happens, say a year from now, the fighters will get compensated extraordinarily well. A lot more than the promoter could afford to pay now.
And Bob, that fight, we've heard you mention in the media, to me, to others, that Crawford and Earl is a pay-per-view. Do you feel that that's the only model that fight of that magnitude falls under, or could we see that on ESPN or on Showtime?
Well, you can, of course, see it, but then the money is limited. As big a fight as it is, and as good a fight as we know it will be, the money, Showtime could pay only a certain amount. You can't expect Showtime to blow its entire budget in doing that fight. Same thing with us and ESPN. It's a terrific fight. Fighters got to be compensated, but budget's a budget. Now on pay-per-view, when there's really tremendous interest, then the public pays for the fight by buying the pay-per-view. The fighters can get really compensated well, and it's a win-win for everybody. It's as simple as that. I mean, you can't go to Showtime and say, Showtime, give us a third of your budget for the year to do Spence and Crawford. They look at you like you were crazy. Same thing with our budget on our ESPN shows. There's a limit to what we can spend, because otherwise it would hurt the other fighters we want to show on ESPN for the entire year. So this is something that is not done without some great seriousness about it. You look at a fight like Crawford and Spence and say, can it be a pay-per-view fight? Answer, yes. Is it a pay-per-view fight now? Answer, probably not. Will it be a pay-per-view fight in a year's time? Probably yes, if the guys keep winning and performing well. And that's the time to do it. When Bud Crawford who I represent, and Spence, Errol Spence, who Heyman represents, can be compensated extraordinarily well for the fight for that fight.
And Bob, obviously, with all the experience that you have, multiple Manny Pacquiao pay-per-views, what's your projection for a Spence Crawford pay-per-view now? We have to keep in mind that, I don't know, do we even keep in mind that Bud only did 50 versus Postal, or is that a thing of a past? Do you think that he's surpassed that bubble? And how many pay-per-views is good enough for Bob Arum? Because Marquez Bradley did, 225,000? You were happy with that, no?
Well, that was horses for courses. That fight, the amount to be paid to each fighter was under control. I don't remember how many it did, but we didn't lose money on that fight, and the fighters got compensated. But 225,000 buys doesn't get Terrence Crawford and Errol Spencer paid appropriately.
Going to get him paid appropriately. Obviously, ESPN reported that Bud made $3 million for the Horn fight, and we know that there's a rumor going around that Earl made $3 million for that Lamont Peterson fight. I'm probably wrong on that, Earl, but as far as ESPN reporting, Bud's purse, they did. Where do you think these guys fall? We know, with guys like Golovkin, they have mandatories from HBO. Where do you think? Because you're saying that it's about budget. How much do these guys deserve for this fight? We see Wilder offering $50,000 to Joshua. We see Eddie Hearn offering him back $15 and $12 million. How much do you see these welterweights making for this fight?
Well, you got to ask them. But I think that, as a promoter, as somebody who looks out for Bud Crawford, Crawford has to get and should get well compensated on the fight, and will, at that particular time when we're ready to do it, figure an estimate of what the pay-per-view buys will be, and hopefully work the numbers accordingly. At this point, I can't answer that question. At this point, I'm not confident that the number to be reached on pay-per-view would be anywhere near, say, a Canelo Golovkin fight or a fight like that. It's my job, and in a way it's Heyman's job, to get those numbers up in the course of the next year so the guys get compensated adequately.
But you don't believe that it would do the pay-per-view buys of a Canelo, and you do feel that the pay-per-view buys of Marquez Bradley was low. So are you looking at a 500,000? Is that a safe place for this fight?
Well, obviously, you when you are convinced that the buys would be 500,000, that's a time to start talking. Now, hopefully, when we start talking, we'll have a pretty good feeling that the buys will be closer to a Canelo Golovkin than to 500. But certainly 500 gives us enough bullets to talk about that fight.
And in terms of opposition in the meantime for Terrence Crawford, is he going to continue? Because at least, in the past few years or months, you have had him mixing it up with the Al Heyman fighters. He fought John Molina, Felix Diaz. We've also heard rumors of a Jose Benavidez. Where do you think Crawford lies? Because we already have an October date for him, right? Or an October possible announcement?
October 13th. The Nebraska Cornhuskers are out of town. They're in Northwestern. So that gives us the market in Omaha. The building's available, and we're planning Bud's fight for October 13th.
Any possible opponents on your mind?
Well, right now, we're looking at, and I don't mean that this list to be exclusive, but certainly Jose Benavidez is a possibility. He's a terrific fighter. He'll be fighting a co-main event on ESPN. Kavalauskas. He's a terrific welterweight, and also this Dominican that has great knockout power, Carlos Adames, who'll be fighting on ESPN Plus on July 28th, I believe it is, in Orlando, and a very tough fight. Those three come to mind. There are others. Brad Goodman and Bruce Trampler will sift through the possibilities, who's available. Obviously, we would like a fight with Garcia or Porter, but they're fighting each other. Thurman is fighting somebody, and Spence, I think, fights this weekend. And we're not ready for that fight yet because of the money. So, we're open to fighting anybody that makes sense. Hopefully, managers of some top welterweights hear this and call me because, it's not limited to fighters who just fight on Top Rank at ESPN.
Now, obviously, Bob, you have years of experience, but I'll still throw you this hardball. How do you keep Terrence Crawford as relevant as he is today, coming off of that Horn win and having this Earl Spence conversation on all boxing forums and all water coolers, while he's fighting two prospects, and Earl is fighting the likes of, Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, now mandatory with Ocampos, in discussions with Keith Thurman.
Well, do you think that Adames or Benavidez has problems with Ocampos? Don't you think that Benavidez?
I will wait until Saturday.
Well,
obviously, Ocampos isn't that known. I mean, even Derek James said that he couldn't find tape on Ocampos, so we're gonna have to wait and see. He could be a Jamie Munguia for all we know, but we'll see what Earl does.
Munguia is a very good fighter, but he beat not a very good fighter to win the title. So I don't know if it helps. I mean, a guy like Munguia, as crude as he is, would not be competitive with a Terrence Crawford. Ocampo would not be a competitive with a Terrence Crawford. And I don't think he'll be a competitive with an Errol Spence. But we'll see. We'll see. That makes boxing an interesting sport. But how does Bud Crawford stay relevant? 4 letters. ESPN, the greatest megaphone in sports. Every sports fan, in the course of a day or a week, watches ESPN. And they gave Terrence a tremendous boost and send-off before this Horn fight. They have him now in New York on various programs on ESPN, so that because of ESPN, Terrence Crawford becomes probably the most relevant fighter at this point in boxing. In other words, no aspersions on Errol Spence, who's a good fighter, very good fighter, but he gets next to no publicity where it really counts compared to a Terrence Crawford because of ESPN.
I was going to say last question and ask you, did you think Lucas Matthysse had enough time if he was able to pull the win over Manny Pacquiao? So I guess you can answer that. But
I'm sorry. No. Great question. Besides, I must tell you that I reached out to Eric Gomez, and I said that if Matthysse is successful with Manny Pacquiao, would he be interested in fighting Terence Crawford? And Eric Gomez said yes. And you're absolutely correct. I'm sorry, but that should be the name on the top of the list, Lucas Matthysse. You're absolutely right.
Perfect. So I guess since I got that one right, I'll extend it. My last question will be, how is Bob Arum able to do what he's doing with ESPN, pay Terence Crawford the sum that he's getting paid, make the ratings, put his A-list fighters on ESPN, and Al Heyman could not? What's the difference between what you're doing and what PBC attempted to do on ESPN?
Well, somebody that has a great product that's on the market doesn't necessarily tell people the secret ingredients that they put into the product. We have been in business for 52 years, and I think we know what we're doing, we know how to program. Heyman may be a good advisor, etc., but it needs a promotion. Heyman is not a promoter. And the difference is, when we're on ESPN, and we have a deal with ESPN, we're not looking to destroy any promoter. We're looking to build the brand and build our fighters and build the sport of boxing. That's our goal. When Heyman started PBC and had all this money behind it, his immediate goal was to destroy the competitors. And to do that, he put his product on half a dozen different networks. And the result was that he wasn't concentrating on building the talent that he had and building the brand. He was more concerned with destroying promoters and blocking them from various networks. That was the big mistake he made. You talk to any promoter out there, we reach out to Lou DiBella. If he has something that can help the program, his fighter is on the main event on July 14th. We reach out to everybody because we're going to need everybody's help to really make this product on ESPN, which is a tremendous opportunity. Starting August, 30 events a year on ESPN. And we need the help of all the other promoters. They'll be compensated. Their fighters can get great exposure, but we can't do it ourselves. That's the difference between our plan and what Heyman's plan was. Do you understand that?
I definitely understand. What I'll ask you now is bring in a new promoter who many are quick to say is one of the best up-and-comers, is Eddie Hearn. He has his own DAZN deal. And I wanted to ask, is Bob Arum in Top Rank with this ESPN deal willing to just buy good fights, being, I don't know, Jamel Charlo versus Jarrett Hurd? Could we see you buying fights for ESPN, or is it strictly has to be a top-ranked co-promotion with a top-ranked fighter versus another promoted fighter?
No, I'm saying we're open for everything. If we could get that Charlo fight and Hurd on ESPN, yes, we would certainly be interested. And Eddie Hearn, you're absolutely right, is a good promoter. He has money from DAZN, and hopefully will put on some good events in the United States, because if Eddie is successful and puts on some good events, and we put on good events, isn't that great for the sport of boxing? It builds the sport. It makes it more relevant. I mean, you can't Nobody can do these things by themselves. They have to be people working for the same goals.
I'm actually really amazed and happy to hear that. I mean, so many years people have pegged the Cold War on Bob Arum not wanting to do business with Golden Boy or Al Haymon.
You understand the environment we were living in. We were relying on two premium networks, HBO and Showtime, and we were like a bunch of animals fighting for dates that were limited, fighting for a piece of their budget that was limited. This is a different environment. This is now where boxing is going to be acceptable by the mainstream, where mainstream people are supporting it. We're entering a new era. Forget about the past. That doesn't matter.
Last one, Bob. How'd you get ESPN to get back on board with boxing and be this invested and have it on all its premium products, like a Sports Center, like a First Take with Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman? How'd you get them to get behind it again?
Well, Todd DeBuff, who's president of the Top Rank, is a great, great communicator, was able to communicate his vision, which is our vision, to ESPN, and we had great, great support from our agent, CAA. They were absolutely instrumental in setting forth our vision and getting this done.
Bob, I'm going to try and stay honest and say that was the last one. So, man, thank you so much, as always, for your time, and until the next time.
Okay, very good. You got a lot of stuff to go out with.
Oh, yeah, great stuff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
In the game, 'cause see the boxing voice.